Today we have about 97% of children get into schools, but then what happens to schools is where the problem lies.
50% of students in grade 5 cannot read simple sentences of grade 2.
Most of our kids come from tough backgrounds. In all of these, the common thing that we see is that their environment is not fully built for learning.
What does it take to actually make change happen for a child? U&I Teach does today is kind of built around that. In some way, what we call theory of change.
Two founders walking to with Satish Manchikanti and Ajit Sivaram. Execution is not a hustle. When you grow people, you grow everything. Two founders walking to.
So here's what nobody tells you about working in the social space or starting a non-profit, right? Finding a cause, something you're passionate about is quite easy. We all are passionate about so many different causes. But then actually getting into the work, building that entire program is tough. Building a program that is impactful, then can actually scale across India and is relevant in a context of India is difficult. Today, we get to sit with two incredible people who have done exactly that at U&I. In our education program, U&I Teach, Madhuri is the one who builds the theory behind all of the incredible change that happens, and Akshay makes it real on ground. So it's a great combination, and we really get to see today what does it take to build an impactful program in the social space.
Obviously, it's a question that we wrestle with day in and day out. So we thought it's a great idea to just come together, talk about U&I Teach. It's a program that we've been running for about 15 years now. It's education-based program. Just to kind of zoom out and start there, in India, when you think about, hey, we want to create impact, one way to create impact is education. That's something the whole of India agrees on. That can be the biggest bridge you can build between the haves and the have-nots. If you're able to educate people, they're going to find their way out of it. So even as we wrestled with it and build a program around it, the problem statement itself has changed over the last couple of decades, because when we started the program 15, 20 years ago, the problem we were wrestling with was enrollment, right? How do we ensure kids get into school? Now that India has done pretty well there. Today we have about 97% of children get into schools, but then what happens to schools is where the problem lies. We're talking about not how to get kids into the school, but how do we ensure that they're learning? How do we ensure that they're engaged? Even as we wrestle with this, and we've built U&I Teach over the years, that's probably a great place for us to start as we're talking about how do you build a great, impactful program. So maybe Madhuri, if you can get us closer to the problem statement. What are we trying to solve through U&I Teach?
Yes. So, like you said, the problem is really not enrollment, right? It's not students being outside of school. It's if you actually see, the enrollment in school has actually increased in India, especially with data from ASER 2025. We've seen that most of the students, more than 90%, are in schools.
Nice.
But enrollment and learning are completely two different.
Yep.
That's what we are wrestling with. Personally, our journey at U&I, the whole journey started with ASER 2018 report saying 50% of students in grade 5 cannot read simple sentences of grade 2. They can't even do simple division at their age. So I think that's where we all started. That's the learning gap we want to work towards.
Something I can add to that is often we think school equals learning. But if we go back to our own childhood, it's not the only place where we learned. In school, I get to go experience learning. But I'll come back home, somebody at home will teach me. I'll get somebody to invest into me. Like, it could be a parent, it could be a sibling, a tutor. A lot of the kids that we work with, for them, it's when they get into these schools, if we imagine their environment, like I'm in a school and there's one government teacher who's teaching me, and for her, it's like 50, 60 students in one classroom, and most of my effort goes into just maintaining,
Managing.
Yes, yeah, managing peace in the classroom.
Yeah.
For a child, I try to catch up there, and then I don't have anybody else later, especially with the children that we work with, nobody else later investing in them and helping them catch up with their studies.
Yeah.
That individual attention plays a big role in how we're able to learn in our childhood. With the kids that we work with, it's the kind of help that they get at home and outside in terms of tutoring that where we see a lot of gap in learning.
I love that. I completely agree that students, when they go home, there is this gap. Even for my kids, they go to an upper middle class sort of school, and they still have to come home and we help them, or at least try to help them. I remember for me in school, friends used to help me pass before and during the exam also. But I think that ecosystem existed. So when you think of these students, can we deep dive into what is their lived experience? When they go home, what are they feeling? Where are they from? What sort of students are we working with? And what are the challenges? What's their lived reality like?
So most of our kids come from tough backgrounds, the kids that we currently work with. And
What is a tough background?
so it's usually that the kids in our environment may not have both their parents. A lot of times they grow up in shelter homes. They come from some sort of trauma background where they've experienced some personal trauma. And it's tough for us to put ourselves in their experience. That's something that we always try to remind ourselves. That's what I mean by tough background. We add learning or education to that. If I imagine myself in my childhood, I had a healthy family. I got to go to a good school. When I came back home, I could always ask around for any doubts that I have, support with preparations for exams. More importantly, I had role models.
Very true.
I had maybe a sibling or a cousin who was doing something, and then it gives me a picture of, okay, I want to become something like that. Or I get inspired by people around me. And because I said 80% of our kids come from shelter homes, a lot of times you don't have that in your environment. And that's something for us to remember. Most of our kids come from either shelter homes, about 80%. Then you have children who we go teach in government schools or low-income private schools. In all of these, the common thing that we see is that their environment is not fully built for learning, especially with the kids that I'm speaking about from shelter homes. If I had to paint a picture, I wake up at the same time, I have food together as a big group. For a huge group of children, there's one caretaker who's supporting them. Then when I go into school, again, I'm treated as a part of a big group. Right? One class with 50 kids, 60 kids. And compare that to how, as a kid, we used to feel like we're very important, like we're seen. Our concerns are heard. There's somebody personally making me feel like if I make a mistake, making me reflect on it, or if I do something good, helping me acknowledge it. You remove all of that. Then you say, now you catch up on education. That's very hard.
The odds are really stacked again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I love how you explained it. When we look at our own lives, there are so many people who came along and helped us. And what we usually say, it takes a village really to raise a child. And that's very true. How do we build that village? I remember about 15 years ago when we started off, just a bunch of friends. And then we said, hey, we have an empty office. What if we get some kids to come and learn English? But at that point, the intention was, hey, we're just helping them with studies. That's a good intention. But I think what took us on a journey was figuring out and understanding the problem statement at a deeper level, the way you both have explained it, and understanding problem deeply and saying, hey, what does it take to actually make change happen for a child? How do you create that village? A lot of what U&I Teach does today is built around that. And it's in some way what we call theory of change. This is our theory of change, saying, okay, if you're able to do X, Y, Z intervention, that you can really have an impact on a child and change their trajectory. So if you can, you've talked about the problem statement, and if you can go get closer with saying, hey, if this is the problem, what is our theory of change? How do we actually make change happen?
To start off, like you said, we started off with just helping the students with studies. But I think on the long run, we realized that's just not enough. We are unable to see the impact that we actually want to see. That is better lives for them, better jobs. That's where we realized we want that theory of change, that big bet, which definitely is not a one-time thing. It's a journey that we had to take to build this out. Theory of change is basically an organization saying, if you do X, you get a Y, and therefore these are the reasons to do it. Our theory of change is not something that hey, out of the whim it came out. It was a lot of research. Also, the fact that we worked for almost 10 years in this education field, our experience also added to it. We read education reports, policies, initiatives. Most importantly, it was having those honest conversations with our community, trying to understand from them what's the need. One thing that stood out from all of this is every child has that potential to thrive. Today, our theory of change, based on all the research, is built to cater to 3 essential pillars, which is your academic skills, life skills, and your career skills. Apart from this, it's just not the content that these kids need. It's also what threads it all together. Is your mechanism of delivery. What we strongly believe is mentorship. Not just content, but also that cornerstone where somebody is always there for the student to look up to.
What completes that theory of change is that you build an ecosystem around their schooling. What happens after school?
Nice.
When they finish school and they come back. That's our program, the after school program. The second part that we kept speaking about, that you don't have somebody investing in it. You need a tutor or a mentor. So what U&I's program here has built into itself is, let's become a 1:1 tutoring program, where after school, if I'm a child from a tough background, I have somebody every week that I can interact with, who will help me support by helping me bridge whatever learning lags that I have in school, and also invest in me personally, talk to me, make sure that they understand me and make me feel seen. That's a huge part of completing this theory of change. One of the kids that I used to work with, because I used to teach as well in U&I, is that she was at the point when I was teaching her, she was actually 2 years older than me. Yeah, she was in college, and at that point she was finishing her second year. She had one more year in college, and she had failed in every English paper.
Wow.
Up until that point, at all 4 papers. She was at the 5th paper. So basically, we had 1 month before her next exam to help her, and then we helped her with it and everything. And then after 1 month, she still failed in the 5th paper also. And then she had one more semester to clear everything. Then we had the rest of the time to do it. But what I noticed is when me and another volunteer sat with her every week, sometimes we actually came multiple days and sat with her, we realized that when we invested in her personally and really understood what she was struggling with, a lot of times it was just confidence. She would not attempt questions because she would be afraid that she'll fail when she writes them. She had the basic skill set, but nobody had helped her say, okay, you actually have it, maybe attempt. We just spent the next 6 months to just help her on that. She actually cleared all of the papers next time.
Wow.
Amazing.
Of course, we had to do a lot of other coaching for her, but the potential is there. When a child is able to crack it, when a child with whatever investment we have put in is able to crack it, then there is a real gap there that we need to identify and fill. That's what we've been trying to build the theory of change for.
Love that story. My entire childhood was the exact opposite. 100% confidence, no knowledge. Yeah. So after school program, so kids come back, they have their own tutor or a volunteer who's maybe in most cases older than them, not younger than them, further on in the journey, who's also a role model. They get to tutor them, mostly English and whatever subject they're struggling with. They get that intervention 2-3 times a week in a learning center across India. That's a great model. I love the fact that you talked about 3 areas. You said academic skills, life skills, career skills. It almost feels like a lot of interventions to provide a child along their journey. Can you take us through that? What does that journey look like? Why do we pick these 3?
Yes. If you look at all the 3 journeys, it starts with them. We start basically at grade 2, and it's a journey that goes on till the young ones get their first jobs.
Nice. They're that young by then. But
Yes, young adults. So let's start with academics.
Yes.
This is where we also start. This is one of our flagship programs. Most of our centers need this. When we were designing this, one of the biggest insights is, for example, teaching a grade 7 student their grade appropriate content while they are functioning at a grade 2 level skill set. Now, that's the crux of our foundational literacy and numeracy program. We do take inspiration from well standardized methodologies like teaching at the right level. What they tell us to do is you customize the learning to that student's level of learning rather than their grade.
So teaching at the right level.
So that inspired us.
Nice.
But that was not just enough for the context that we work with. So therefore, that was just definitely an inspiration, but we needed that cocktail of inspiration and innovation. So we had to build a curriculum in such a way that it suited our context of students who are from first generation learners, who are from shelter homes, who needed more practice-based learning and more interaction,
Nice.
that time of connecting with their volunteers. So we do continue to use ACER reading and tests, but that's only to place the students at the correct level of learning, which is required. But based on that, we group our students, and the students are then taught through activities. So that's currently our academic skills, your foundational literacy and numeracy. Along with this, we also provide them the after-school program, which is based on Indian context, what's commonly called the tuitions program. How much ever we say foundations is shaky, getting that understanding in the larger crowd or the society is quite difficult. Some of them resort to just the tuition program. So that also we cater to. So
in tuition, we're tutoring other subjects, right?
Other
Whatever the student needs, and they're still getting that one-on-one attention
Yes.
too fast.
So like Akshay said, we cater to specific subjects like let's say economics, anything.
And the volunteers then tag,
Correct.
hey, this volunteer is
Based
teaching
on
economics, this volunteer is teaching whatever it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just talking about how volunteers are tagged to a child. One of the things I know we have done intentionally over the years is when a volunteer is sitting with a child, though the main vehicle maybe they may be teaching English or math, but we want the time they spend together to go beyond just the subject. That's where the life skills come in. where we have moved away from is saying, hey, this is an English class and this is a life skills class. Saying, hey, how can those happen together in a harmony where a volunteer is sitting with you and as he's teaching English, he's also able to mentor you. It could be confidence, like the story Akshay did. It could be hygiene. So we took that integrated intervention approach. If you're able to throw some light on what is this integrated intervention, how does in one class English happens and life skill happen at the same time?
Like you said, the whole idea was to give the student a holistic journey and not just academic content. We didn't want life skills to be another 2-hour workshop where, yeah, we discussed it and then it's forgotten. Your skills need to be lived than just be discussed. So for us, we put our best of ability into creating all our learning activities, let it be your academic program workbooks or your career activities have been intentionally designed, which will help the student not only learn reading or explore careers, they're also able to practice and reflect on these skills. It's not a one-way journey. Let it be expressing themselves, getting confident, being self-aware, self-reflection, etc.
I love that. So you're saying actually life skills is baked into the curriculum. We have a 5-level English curriculum for students depending on their level.
Correct. We haven't made our curriculum very rigid. So even the activities that we've given them is flexible enough for them to improvise as they get to know the students. If you look at it, we don't just, we just don't go and do a pre-test, post-test snapshot of, hey, what the student is learning. Rather, we ensure that we capture observations through the classes and even the students get to reflect on what they do through the year. So it's a continuous, hey, where my student is, are they actually using the activities? Because even our volunteers come from non-teaching background. So the learning activities should be created in a way that they're creative, but also anybody can implement it, be customizable and flexible for it.
So we've got academic skills, we've got life skills almost baked into that. We also have workshops within life skills. We also have professional counselors who are tagged to some children who need it based on a need basis. Finally, the last one, career skills. How do we actually, because the goal is to get a child through school, college, and then at a well-paying job that where they have a future and can break their cycle of poverty. How does this whole careers path work for students? What are we seeing on the ground?
It's definitely something that we are currently designing and working on. This has also been intentionally kept towards the last phase of development that we are in today. Because, like I said, foundation is shaky. What are we going to build on if the foundation is shaky? So today, we are customizing our career skills with not just random workshops where maybe a person in a certain career walks in and just talk. Doesn't really work. We ensure that this one-on-one mentoring is well mapped such that a person, the mentor can actually talk to the student about careers while they're helping them practice skills. So this is the focus of our career skills program. It's skills along with exposure, as much as exposure that we can help them break their limits and go into college or set up a career for themselves. So for us, it is building the confidence. What we also do is we have specific workshops that help them understand various careers. We have an app that is being built in-house called the Career Compass, where the students can log in, explore careers based on their aptitude test. Today, the job market is so vast that we had to give them expertise.
So I love that. Thank you for explaining that interventions. You've got academic skills, life skills, career skills, and they're delivered through various interventions. I want to move to the classroom now. We often say that the U&I classroom looks probably very different to a traditional classroom. So Akshay, if you had to walk in and you've done this many years, volunteering, then teaching as a volunteer, then managing the class as a leader, and now designing classrooms. How is U&I classroom different? If I walk into it, what am I going to see?
It's a lot of fun. When we think of a classroom, we're thinking you enter a classroom, there's a teacher who's facing the students, there's a blackboard behind it, and then about 30 students sitting and looking at the teacher. U&I class is very different from that. We have that scope because it's an after-school program, where when you enter a U&I classroom, there is groups of children sitting in smaller groups all across the hall. There's a teacher and 1 to 2 children sitting with the teacher.
Nice.
So then what happens is every student feels like they have a teacher. That's very important to how we described our theory of change. Of course, when you imagine that, you can imagine a little bit of chaos. Because in a traditional classroom, managing chaos is one of the biggest problems.
Sit down, keep quiet.
Keep quiet. Somebody's constantly, like every 5 minutes, my teacher used to say, "Can you be quiet?"
Yeah.
In UNI classroom, that's very different because we welcome chaos. In a sense where you will see children moving around and learning. You will see children playing a game and learning. There's a lot of power in doing that kind of experiential learning. We also, so when I say this, it sounds unstructured, right? But how do you structure it? We follow this set of tools called Capturing Kids' Hearts. It's developed by the Flippin group, and we've been trained on that. So we take that very seriously, and across every single shelter home, across every single center in UNI, it's implemented. Even in our office spaces, we do it with our staff.
Good things, affirmation.
Yeah, the whole set. And there's a lot of science behind how that's built. So when you're entering to a UNI classroom, as soon as the child comes in and the volunteer comes in, within 5 seconds, there's greetings going on. There's a fist bump or a high five. Everybody feels welcome. They're excited and enthusiastic about getting into the classroom. And after that happens, we start with something called Good Things, where you talk about how did your week go. When these pairs of students and volunteers sit, they share with each other what was something that made them smile or made them happy in the week. We find that to be very powerful because a lot of times for our kids, this is the first time when they're sharing that. A lot of times we hear that their good thing is actually, hey, last week I had this class. I was waiting for this class to happen, and this week this happened. And that really helps because they're also hearing from their mentors. When I share, hey, I learned this. Or it could even be that I watched this movie and it was very fun. They're getting exposed to how life works and what are certain things to look forward for. It's very powerful, but it's very simple.
Yeah.
Right? And then you start into classes. Because you mentioned earlier, it's a lot of keep quiet. The way we bring attention in UNI classrooms is we raise a T. Time out.
Yeah.
Right. Something that powerful happens in classrooms is as soon as you raise this, you don't need to shout. Anybody who sees this will raise a T and then they'll keep quiet. Because that expectation is set. Within 30 seconds, you see the entire classroom just pay attention to the person who raised a T. And with small tools like this, we're able to build a lot of behavior. We have something called affirmations where we affirm small things, not just the big ones. Hey, you shared your eraser with somebody. I noticed that. And then every class ends with something called a launch. A launch is something that is inspiring, but also ties back to what I learned today in class. So because the principle there is the last thing you say is the first thing you remember. And imagine all of these tools multiplied across the entire year. A child experiences this from every single volunteer, every single classroom. Builds a really good structure for the kind of culture we're trying to build. And then we've layered all the curriculum that Madhuri spoke about within that. The workbooks, the learning happens within that. It's experiential. It's a lot of games and it's a lot of learning that way. Then you have micro tests that happen through the year. We call them knowledge pit stops. And this is how you'll experience a classroom. We're able to do a lot of learning within this.
Just to add on what Akshay said, these practices and everything, they're so important for that overall development of the student. Chair is not just content. For example, one of those flipping tools, which is affirmation, we've seen so much value in it that it is one of those life skill integrated learning activities that we have in the textbook. It helps them reflect. It helps them affirm each other. The content also is created in a very sensitive manner that it should not affect our students who are from the context that we work with. So it is quite intentionally created, like he said. It's what one-on-one and that mentoring with volunteers can do, which we cannot bring in a normal schooling set.
No way. I think that's excellent. You've got a customized curriculum, a volunteer who's able to personalize it to a child, a great learning environment with all of the Capturing Kids Arts tools. It seems like an incredibly impactful program on ground. The question then is, how do you take something so personalized, so customized, and then scale that across India? 150 learning centers, 40 cities. How does that translate to different cultures, different centers across India?
That's a problem that we solve every year. I say that very intentionally because it's a journey to build something like that. When we scale a solution that is so dependent on people, there is a lot of attention to people that we need to give. In our experience, something that we've learned is the more we empower people within these environments, the better the solution works. The decision making has to happen at the teacher level and on the ground. And everything that we do, the mindset that we approach it with is not to say, we'll tell you exactly what to do, just do that and come. But on the other hand, it is, we'll give you a lot of tools and we'll give you a lot of structure. But within that, we will enable you to be creative. And interestingly enough, when we do that, volunteers, the people who are in the ecosystem, feel really empowered to teach. And the students feel really empowered also because it feels like they have control over how they learn in their classrooms. That's a huge part of how we have been able to scale. But in practice, how does this look like? In order to take this people power and scale it, what we've done intentionally is we have something called learning circles. We call this model the learning circle model. And essentially what that boils down to is about 7 to 10 students and their volunteers become one learning circle in every shelter home.
Nice.
So I might have about 50 students, but they're in smaller groups of about 5 to 6 learning circles. Within this learning circle, what happens is the teachers are in connection with each other. After every class, they sit down and do a debrief of the classroom. They discuss in WhatsApp groups what they're going to teach next week.
Nice.
So this becomes like a unit and it's the whole two pizza rule. Small groups work and they become like a unit that works with the children through the year. Right? And in order for this unit to be guided, what happens is there's an experienced teacher who becomes a leader after 1 year of teaching, and they take care of one learning circle. So during class, this leader comes in class and they observe how teachings are going. After class, they sit down for half an hour and debrief. This is an expectation we set with everybody. We train them for it. They come in saying, hey, I sign up for 2 hours of teaching class, and then I also will sign up for that debrief.
30 minutes of every nice.
Only when they sign up, we even recruit them as volunteers.
Very good.
Right? And another important part here is, in order for this whole thing to work, a volunteer has to be consistent. The other thing that we tell them is when they join, we expect them to come to 80% of the classes. If they can't make it, we don't even take them. So I think that how that converts is about, in a year, we get about 16,000 applications, but we only take about 4,000 volunteers. After this layer, 10 of these groups will get mapped to one person who we call the chapter leader. And the chapter leader essentially governs about 80 students, and they're still a volunteer. They've been in the ecosystem for 2, 3, 4 years. They have an experience of how this has to work. So they're really empowered to run the year. They handle recruitment. They handle training the volunteers. We give them tools and resources to do. They visit centers and every single week they attend meetings. They create meetings. A lot of this management happens just by people. And up until this day, there's no staff.
All volunteers.
That's the power of this. If you build the right structure, then they're able to take care of the whole thing. We have great retention every year. We have good attendance from across every single layer. After this, you have the first paid person, the first staff layer, which is your fellow. A fellow has about 200 plus students. They work with about 3 chapter leaders. Then they take care of all the learning circles below them. And this person trains, equips, visits centers, does audits, runs the entire system. And layer this with tech. They have a lot of tech that's working on the side, which collects data, it reinforces decision making, and all the resources are also tech enabled. So people are able to quickly use their phones and get all these resources. We're also integrating a lot of AI into this. So when you build a platform like this intentionally, then you see a lot of scalability, even for a solution that's so customizable and personal.
We talked about the problem. We talked about the theory of change. We talked about the interventions, how it's delivered, right? Coming to the crux of it, the impact, because it seemed like a whole lot of effort, whole lot of activity. Sometimes when there's so much activity involved, you can just be caught up with activity and be happy just measuring it. So Madhavi, can you tell us, how do we actually measure impact? How do we ensure that a child is moving from point A to point B? If you can throw some light on that.
What we want to do is understand whether we are creating that overall impact that we want to see in the students. It just doesn't sit well to have a pre and post snapshot and do justice for everything that we do. It is something that even we are learning how to do better. But today what we do is not just that. We have regular student logs, the document that we use, which volunteers after every class fill, not just their learning activities reflection, but they also observe students and they say, hey, these are the skills that they're developing, or these are the behavioral changes that we are seeing. All of these, along with feedback that we regularly do, not just through forms, but we also have the team go on ground, interact with people at random and see how they are feeling the curriculum is being delivered on ground, whether the students are actually enjoying it. So it's an overall outlook of these assessments. For example, in foundational literacy and numeracy, we use as a standardized test where we understand where initially at the baseline assessments at what level they are, whether the students are good at recognizing letters, words, or they're good at reading stories. Along with this, these skills are also observed. So this way, we are able to analyze if the student is having that overall journey and they're moving that lag, not just the academic level, but also the skills. And are we giving them the confidence and the resilience that they need to overcome this lag and move forward in their life? This is how we measure impact. Coming to impact, how we measure this is for foundational literacy and numeracy program, we have our assessments based off a standardized ACER reading and arithmetic tool, where we use these tools to identify at the beginning of the year whether the student's able to read words or recognize letters, read an entire story. This helps us understand which level we can place a students in. That is the learning level, not their grade specific level. So based on this, it helps us identify this is the level So this is the content and this is the learning aspect.
That were intervention.
Through the year, they also get continuous assessments, which is called the knowledge pit stops. This can be customized as per the student's learning. So we have continuous assessments also happening. And at the end of the year, we again use the ACER tool based assessment to see if the learning lag has been overcome. This way, we've seen students jump levels, at least one level a year. That's our target.
Maybe I can share one of the stories that
Yeah.
I've closely been a part of. One of the kids that we used to teach when she was in 9th grade, her name's Shiny, a few years back, she had a few learning lags. Right? We assessed her, we taught her for an entire couple of years, made sure she was able to address these learning lags and come into, be more confident facing her board exams and later clearing her exams. And then after that, she cleared her exams, went on to college, and we're still in touch with her. Her volunteer is still closely working with her. When we look at it today, Shani's done some incredible things after that addressing her because her confidence improved. She's able to match up in academics. And now she's a university topper.
Wow.
And she does her corporate secretaryship, cleared a couple exams in her first attempt. Now she's looking forward to the third exam and she's getting into that.
That's amazing.
The entire community has been help her with her exams, her colleges, and everything. She's also gotten a couple of her sisters to get into college. She's really started leading her family. Right? That's something that we see incredibly. These investments that we make now in terms of addressing their foundation unlocks what they can do in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. Such a great example of it actually takes a village to raise a child. What does it take to build a strong, impactful social impact program in India today? What I heard from you all is maybe 3-4 things. Find a cause that is worth addressing, build a theory of change around it, then have a strong delivery of model that can implement that theory of change. Then finally, the word we all love, data, monitoring, evaluation, that you're able to monitor and actually evaluate the effectiveness of your program with clear metrics. I love that it paints a larger picture of how to run a good program. Thinking beyond that, both of y'all have been in this space now nearly a decade. What for you really excites you about the work you do, about the program you all run, and what really wakes you up in the morning to keep doing this, to keep bettering it?
For me, being able to be creative to make sure that these students get the chance to overcome their trade-offs, giving them that curriculum that will help them actually work towards becoming like a Shiny, where it's just not them, but also they're empowering their family because they can be first generation learners. That's the creative aspect and how I get to interact with the community to do with that. That's what inspires me.
Loved.
We're almost giving them the building blocks for that.
For me, it's dual impact.
Whoa, tell us more. Yeah.
Because we have beneficiaries for our students. We also have our volunteers. And in the outside world, they don't really interact. They have two separate worlds. But here we see a lot of just both of them coming together and working with each other, bringing their life experiences to share with each other. When we speak to our students, they say they're learning a lot from their volunteers. They love interacting with them week on week. And we see them learn so much from them. We see our volunteers finding a lot of purpose here. A lot of them later convert into just full-time social workers. We see them able to apply their skills and see value in what they've learned in their life and see how that can help others. We're building for both of them. This bridging of this gap is something that really inspires me.
Love that, yeah. And I think that's very key to U&I's vision. We want to build communities of change, not just for the beneficiaries, but also for, I feel like the volunteers are as much beneficiaries in this program as the students are. So for us, they're all beneficiaries. Building those journeys for both of them, a life of more purpose, a life of more financial freedom is key to building a great program. Thank you both of y'all. It's been great having you all here.